Now, back to Part of the Answer on AM 560. A peek inside the minds behind some of the most successful businesses in Chicagoland. Here's Mike Scott.
Well, we met our guest for a total of about 90 seconds, and already the skies are opening and the sun is beginning to come through. Marcia Hinds is our guest, an autism recovery advocate, an autism mother. She will be appearing at the Autism One conference May 22nd through 26th here in Chicago, and that's at the Lowe's Chicago O'Hare Hotel in Rosemont. And you will want to see Marcia talk about her son, Ryan, who she wrote about in her book, I Know You're in There, Winning Our War Against Autism. And Marcia Hinds is our guest here on Part of the Answer on AM 560, The Answer. Marcia, we're glad you're with us.
Thanks for having me.
In your wildest dreams, did you ever see yourself with the title, and it's the title I have on the sheet that was given to me, Autism Recovery Advocate?
No, never. Because, I have to tell you, when I did this with my son, if you read my book, it'll look like I sort of had a plan and I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't. I was hanging on by my fingernails. Yeah. You have to understand that Ryan is now 30 years old, okay? And we did this before there was internet, before there was help out there like there is now. Now there's almost too much information, and it's hard for parents because of that.
Are you interested in the diagnosis of what may have caused the autism, or did you dig in and just go right away and start fighting for recovery?
I think for us, we walked into, the leading expert. We lived in the Twin Cities at the time.
Sure.
And now we live in California. But we walked into this psychiatrist's office when Ryan was he was about 3.5. And we walked in there ready to find answers, but the specialist didn't have any. And the expert that we waited months to see ripped away every dream we had for our child when she said there was no recovery, there was no cure, and there was no hope. And she went on to tell us that if we were really lucky, Ryan might end up running a computer in the basement of some company where he wouldn't have to deal with any people.
Right.
And then she finished us off. The final blow was when she said most of these children usually end up in institutions or jail. Now, today, my son works as an aerospace engineer at a major company. He has good friends, and he's leading a very typical life. And the message I want to get across to other parents is that although this isn't easy, autism is medical and it's very treatable. And I want what happened for my son to become the norm rather than the exception. Sure.
What did it look like? And again, we're trapped by time. What did it look like when you walked in? What symptoms were presented when you first walked into that psychiatrist's office in the Twin Cities? How did you know something was, for lack of a better term, and an uneducated term from my part, term of art, off?
Well, I didn't know because I was definitely in denial.
Sure.
We're all in denial at first.
Okay. All right.
And the really strange part is that most of our kids are very smart. They may not have language, they may not be able to communicate, but they're brilliant. I mean, Ryan could work any piece of equipment in my house. He could unlock the door that was broken that I couldn't unlock.
Right.
So I knew he was smart, but he could not, he didn't hug me, he didn't communicate, he didn't, have any of the things that you get from most kids. I remember when he was little, I used to say to him, because he didn't want to even be touched, I'd say to him, Ryan, you have to hug me. It's your job. I'm your mom. And that's
right.
what I would tell him.
Yeah.
So the one thing that we did, I think that was really important is we looked for the things that were the medical reasons that caused this. And I actually wish we would stop calling it autism altogether and instead call it what it really is, which is a messed up immune system. And if you can fix what's wrong with a child's immune system, then they can learn what they couldn't before.
Sure. One of the things you talk extensively about in the book, as I understand, is Ryan's autism's impact on his sister. Why is that to you a very important part of this story?
Well, it's really hard for parents because, you know, when you're in the process of trying to help one, you're wondering, oh my God, am I messing up my typical child while I'm doing this? Because I'm spending all my time doing this. And I know this is a big concern for parents. I hear questions from them all the time about this. And the really great part of our family was that my daughter now works in the autism field. She's now a BCBA, and she trains therapists how to work with kids with autism.
Sure.
And, you know, they're always amazed at her skill. And to be honest, you know, she makes me look like an amateur. She's really good at this. And, but she had her first training session when she was, you know, 7 years old.
Right. She was immersed in it.
She was immersed in it. But, you know, we made sure, you know, one of the things that we did is she always got time alone with me. It wasn't a lot of time, but we had a date every Saturday night. And she knew that on Saturday night she would have Mommy all to herself.
What a great idea.
My husband would take Ryan out for an adventure, and of course Ryan never wanted to leave his mom. He was attached to my hip.
Sure.
So Frank would have to find interesting ways to get him out of the door. And, you know, Ryan was very obsessed with electric plugs and extension cords and light switches.
Yeah.
And we used all those things. Those were part of every lesson when we were trying to teach him stuff.
We have a very short segment left with our guest, Marcia Hinds. Her book, I Know You're In There, Winning Our War Against Autism. More with Marcia on Part of the Answer on AM 560 The Answer in just a moment.
And now, more of AM 560's Part of the Answer, a behind-the-scenes look at some of Chicago's most successful businesses. Once again, here's Mike Scott.
We're back with Marcia Hinds and Part of the Answer on AM 560 The Answer. Marcia will be part of the guest list at the upcoming Autism One conference at the end of May here in Chicago, May 22nd through 26th. Do you know what day you're speaking at the conference?
I am speaking on Thursday, and I'm right before Robert Kennedy Jr., so if people want to get a good seat for his talk, they have to come listen to mine. So I think that's a good spot.
I don't know. People may want to switch out and go see you and then hang around for RFK. I think that might be interesting. Now, when you meet a family at the Autism One conference at the end of May, you exchange hugs, and you probably have experienced this before, I imagine. They explode with questions. And at the end of May in Rosemont, you take them by the hand and you sit down on a couch nearby. You've got just 60 seconds. What do you tell them?
I tell them that their kids can get better and that they have to trust their gut, and that, you know, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. There is no magic bullet. This is hard work, and it takes both the medical and the behavioral and the educational to get the kids where they need to be. Now, today, Ryan's an aerospace engineer,
right,
and he has amazing people skills. His boss once came in and said to him, you know, Ryan, your people skills are great, and no one at his work knows he was ever severely affected. And he had to call me right away. And he said, Mom, you know, this is what he told me. And, of course, we both started laughing because we both knew I had to teach him all those social skills.
Sure. I'm just so impressed with your stick-to-itiveness and your love and your ability, your love for your daughter and Ryan, and your ability to communicate to us in a practical way. Because I think when we experience, even sometimes one-on-one with a family who has an autistic child, we get scared and we don't know what to do and we don't know how to help.
It is scary, and it's very strange. It's a very strange thing. I mean, they act really, really weird. And, you know, what you have to do is just treat them as if they were normal, even though they're not.
Huh, okay.
You know, You have to, you have to keep talking to them, even though you get no response. And that was one of the hardest things to do, because, he looked like he was out to lunch.
Sure.
All I got was that blank stare.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that he was even hearing what I was saying.
Right.
And it wasn't until he was better that I realized that he was learning during that time.
Amazing. I'm amazed by that.
Because he knew things that he could have only learned when he was what I call in the height of autism.
Sure.
Okay.
And folks who want to hear about how this worked, they can go to resources that you've put together. How do they contact those resources that you've put together?
I have a website. They can either look up the book on Amazon. It's called I Know You're In There, Winning Our War Against Autism. I self-published it first, but it was just picked up by a publisher, and now I have the same agent as Geraldo, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm going to get to go on all the talk shows.
Nice. I love that.
And he's even working on maybe getting the movie made, which I hope that happens, because so many people with kids don't have time to read.
Love it.
But my website is www.autismandtreatment.com.
I'll say it again. Autism-treatment.com. Is that right?
Exactly.
Excellent. And you will be at the Autism One conference between May 22nd and May 26th, right before Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We look forward to you coming to Chicago. We look forward to hearing you, and thank you for sharing your expertise on Part of the Answer on AM 560, The Answer.